Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist and Hank Goldberg here in Las Vegas. It's a big weekend coming up. You know, tomorrow, we haven't talked about this much, but tomorrow is opening day baseball. We've got some great matchups tomorrow, Hank. And of course, we got the NCAA Sweet 16. We got horse racing coming up this weekend, and we got the crazy NBA. It's still going on. The Denver up 30 points at the half, and they blow the lead, and they don't cover, but they win. So it's a crazy sport. The NBA is
well.
Nuts.
They not only won, but they tied for first place.
Yes, they did. So what do you got going on today, Hank? What do you see for the weekend?
You know, it's like I talked to my supervisor from ESPN, talking about my taping hours, and yesterday he was at the tennis in Florida, and he hopped on a plane to go to Seattle for opening day. Not a bad life.
Not a bad life at all. That's going to be a great matchup. I like the dog in that game. You know, Seattle to profit last year. They made some money at home, and I like some upsets. And they got a couple games under their belt. They went over to Japan, won a couple games against Oakland. Nice price on the dog there. I got some money on them already. But
some interesting things are going on in Arizona right now at the NFL owners meetings, and replay will now be challengeable. When I say replay will be used on pass interference now.
Yes, and I like that because, well, anyway, I like it. I want to get it right, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I prefer it to be covered by that, to be able to go back.
Anything to make you sit there and watch those games forever.
Well, no, but I don't want to feel like I got robbed either. You know, so especially when you got substantial money on these games. But it's a wonderful time. We got great matchups tomorrow in the NCAA. We got 16 teams in there and only one double-digit seed, which is Oregon. And it's amazing how we didn't get any real Cinderellas in the mix.
Oregon has won 10 straight games, but they could still be considered a serious dog. They've got some size. They can rebound, and they've got some good guard play, and they could be troublesome.
Yeah, they got a pretty decent coach too, and Dana Altman. You know, they lost Bowl early in the season, and after I think 9 games he played, they adjusted their whole team concept, and they've become a stronger team as a result.
I would say that I don't know if you would call them a Cinderella team, but Florida State has Terrence Mann, who was the guy who was the character in Field of Dreams, I thought. Now he's come back as a basketball player, and he's one heck of a player. And he's not the only factor in that game against Gonzaga. They've got another guy who's over 7 feet tall, who could be a guy who could hold up underneath the basket. And they're deep. They're senior laden. They're experienced. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do against Gonzaga.
Yeah, you know, the Gonzaga is a very impressive team, but I think this matchup is one that can give them some trouble. I'm not saying that I'm picking Florida State to win the game straight up, but I think it's going to be a very tough physical game. And like you pointed out, Florida State has the weapons to make this a very tough game for the Zags to win it and move on.
Florida State is 7-1, getting points in this tournament. And they've got length, they've got quickness, and they're like I said, pretty deep team. Gonzaga has a couple of guys, Williams and Hachimura, who are foul prone. If they get into foul trouble, it could be an interesting game.
Oh, definitely.
And I'll tell you something, Florida State will try to get them in foul trouble. They're gonna take the ball to those guys, and they get a lot of free throws, Florida State, and that could be a factor in the game. Keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and they're a pretty good free throw shooting team too. That you're right about that. Excellent point. The Thursday games, we got Purdue and Tennessee. You got Oregon, Virginia. That's in the.
I'm going to give you a stat on the Tennessee game.
Okay.
That in their last 3 games, in the second half of games, they lost the second half to Iowa by 21 points.
Oh boy.
They lost the second half to Colgate by 5 points, and they lost the second half to Auburn by 11 points. This coach just can't stand prosperity. He gets into a second half of games, and they just give it up. And I love Purdue as a factor in that game because right now they're really hot. They've got a guy in Carson Edwards who scored 42 points against Villanova. They also have a guy named Matt. His name is Matt Harms, who's 7'3", who can defend the basket pretty well. This is a very competitive game, and I'll tell you something. I don't trust that team at all. They just blowing leads in the second half of games. They can't finish.
Excellent analysis there. The Big Ten has done extremely well this year in this tournament. Very scared. Yep. What they did to Villanova. I know the Big East was down this year, but boy, that was ugly. What they did there. Very, very impressive on their part. And we have we talked a little bit about Oregon. They right now they're let me try to get this damn screen to come up. 8.5-point underdog to Virginia. With a total on the game of 119. That's wow. I know that probably both teams will be in the 50s. Maybe one team will reach 60. That's unbelievable. Very low total.
Well, you know something. Oregon against Cal Irvine, they generated a lot of turnovers, and that's their game. And Virginia's got to be careful about turnovers in this game. Oregon's got a couple of guys, Kenny Wooten and Paul White, and they got another guy, Lewis King. They're tremendous players. They got size, and they're going to be tough on the boards. And they could get Virginia some trouble. Virginia, in a way, depends on the threes with a couple of their shooters. Guy is one of them. If he's not hitting his threes, although he's been a 45% shooter, they could have some difficulties. But Virginia's also very good defensively. And so you got 2 defensive-oriented teams here. And, they can defend, and Virginia is deep at the forward position. So you got 2 teams that are kind of resemble each other.
Yeah, and you got 2 good head coaches, too. Bennett and, Dan Altman, they're very... This is a big number. 8.5 is a big number for a game that with a potential low score like they're talking about. Michigan, coming out of the Big Ten, is going to go up against Texas Tech, and the game is Michigan's 1.5. Texas Tech is the leading defensive team in the nation. In fact, defensive efficiency. Both these teams are going to play. I mean, you got another two good head coaches. You know, not getting any advantage here at the coaching end of it. There's two very good head coaches.
Well, Texas Tech has held their opponents to 36.8%, and Michigan has held their opponents to 37.7%.
Wow.
You can't get any closer than that. Michigan held Florida to 49 points, which was 18 points lower than their average. I love Michigan. They got Charles Matthews, who's a great defender. They're 7-1, getting points. They got a guy named not getting points. They got a 7'1" guy named Teskey, who's a very tough defender. You know, they've got all kinds of guys who are good on the break coming out of their defense. And I picked Michigan to be a Final Four team, and I'm not getting out of that. Although Texas Tech, you know, they've got. Here's something that bothered me about Texas Tech. It's a statement the coach made when he was describing his team. Defense is our DNA. This is what we recruited for, and this is what they are. Never said anything about scoring.
Well, they haven't said anything about it, but when you look at their offense, I mean, you go back into, they've been scoring in the 70s, 80s, and 90s for the most part for the last 20, let's say 15 games. I mean, they got 78 Buffalo, 72 Northern Kentucky, West Virginia got 74, 80 against Iowa State, 81 to TCU, 84 to Oklahoma State, Kansas, they scored 91, 86 against Baylor. I mean, these are high-scoring games for them, even though they don't talk about it. I don't know. It's I think they're more offensively talented than they let you believe, but their defense has been incredible. Very tough game.
They're a grinded-out type of team offensively. And, you know, now they're going up against a team that can really defend. It's interesting to see what happens in that game.
Yeah,
I think where Michigan has an edge is in their quickness.
Well, you talk about Michigan's defense. I mean, you look at their games, and in the last 5 games, there's one team that got 65 points, and that was Michigan State. Everybody else was in the 40s and 50s. I mean, they are very talented on the defensive end, no question. That's a hell of a game. You got Beard against Beeline. That's great coaching. Great coaching. You got
the only team that's given Beeline trouble is in Michigan State.
Yeah, you can't beat them. 3 games this year they lost to them. I mean, speaking of Michigan State, they're going up against LSU, and you got a real coaching mismatch here. You got the backup coach because of Wade being suspended, and Michigan State with Izzo. That's Michigan State sitting here at this game, 6.5 point favorite over LSU.
Well, LSU has the substitute coach in Brentford, and they were life and death in their last game. Michigan State, I heard some distressing rumors about the future of Michigan State, and it has to do with I didn't think there was anything wrong with the way Izzo went after that player the other day. He didn't mishandle him or anything. He got in his face, but he has the other issues still facing him. And there are some people think that he's going to be under pressure to keep his job after the season is over. But he's a tremendous coach, and this is his time. And you know, he's got Cassius Winston, who's one of the great ball handlers in college basketball. But you know, LSU came close to getting beat their last game. They're a team that has trouble finishing, and you know, they're not a great second half. And this might be a little bit too big for Benford.
Well, Michigan State deserves to be the favorite. There's no question about that. And then when you look at the coaching matchup, it's a huge coaching advantage, experience-wise. And
well, the real coach is not there. For right now, LSU's coach is suspended.
Right. That's exactly right. Then you got Duke.
Benford looks a little lost at times.
I think that very well could be the case. Got a good matchup in the Virginia Tech Duke game. Duke is sitting at a 7-point favorite. It opened 10. It's down to 7. And the way it's looking, it might actually, in some spots, it might go to 6.5.
Well, Virginia Tech beat 77-71 the last time they played. In that game, they made 29 trips to the free throw line, 19 trips. Blackshear is a tremendous outside player. But in that game, and both teams depend on one shot. In that game, of course, Zion didn't play. And Barrett, who only scored 4 points in that game, was playing with a terrible case of flu. Both those guys will be available when this game makes a big difference.
It does.
Also, Duke in that game was coming off a run where they had coming off games with Virginia, Louisville, North Carolina State, North Carolina, and Syracuse. If ever they were ripe for a tough game, Virginia Tech, who caught them at the right time on the schedule.
That should be an interesting matchup. Revenge spot there and everything else going. And if you move down to Houston and Kentucky. Kentucky is it's a 3-point. They're a 3-point favorite over Houston. Houston, of course, has been a surprise team all year. Amazing run this year. They did lose to Cincinnati in the championship game, but they've since come back and played very well. 33-3 on the year. Amazing year for Houston.
Somebody said that Houston didn't beat anybody this year. They did beat LSU, and they did beat Kentucky. And in that game, Kentucky only scored 76 points. They got a pair of guys, and Davis and what's their other guy's name? Who's real? They've got two real. Glenn Robinson. Robinson's a tremendous player, and if he's on his game, they're tough. Kentucky, I'll tell you something. They could have been in trouble in their last game against Wofford, but Wofford's shooters didn't show up. And Kentucky's long, even without Washington. They got Reed Travis, who's tremendous. Hagens is a great player. They got a guy named Hero, who's a tremendous shooter. I just think Kentucky has too much for Houston.
Well,
it's a good game.
It should be a good game. I mean, you do have the issue of Kentucky playing a much tougher schedule, but it's hard to know if that'll show up or not because Houston plays a good brand of ball. We got a good coach. I think the line is a little short. I think it should be a little bit more than that, but
Yep, I agree.
not by much. Maybe maybe 4, 3.5, 4, but that's splitting hairs. It's going to come down to coaching moves and fouls and turnovers. And the one thing about Kentucky is they're young. But Calipari's a good coach. He knows how to get them going. I think this is going to be a good matchup. I know this is a team we're going to talk about next, is Auburn against North Carolina. And Auburn, they're an exciting team. I mean, they play a good brand of basketball. They like to move up and down the court. They're over and under on the years, 22 overs and 14 unders for Auburn. They like to move, and it's a big total on this game. Opened 160.5. It's up to 165. And North Carolina's a 5-point favorite, Hank.
It's going to be a track meet, no question about it. And I think that with Auburn is 43% shooting threes.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll say.
And they've got a couple of guys there. Brian Brown can really shoot. And they've got he's a top guy, and they've got Hoover, who can shoot him. But they can defend too. People they don't pay any attention to that, but they have a defense that's very disruptive, and they get a lot of fast break points out of their defense. And they've got a 6'11" guy named Wiley who triggers that fast break, along with O'Keely. They're very good on the boards, very physical, and this could be a problem for North Carolina. If, Kobe White, when he goes to the basket, although they're a little undersized against Auburn, which could be a problem for him. Although Cam Johnson is a tremendous player, I like him a lot. He could be the difference in the game at 6'9". There's going to be a lot of scoring. And North Carolina, for that matter, if they get beat on the boards, that could be a big factor for Auburn. Keep an eye on that.
You're right.
And, Auburn is, Bruce maneuvers his guys very well. He rests them at critical times in the game, and he uses his bench very sparingly and very well. And he's not that hurt by guys coming in off the bench. And North Carolina, of course, has got 5 great players starting. They can all score. It's going to be a fun game to watch. I think that's the most entertaining game of the weekend.
It probably will be. If you like up and down basketball, that's for sure. I personally think the total has gone too high. I think that's too big of a move, but I think the opener at 160 was better than the 165 we're seeing now. But I'm not going to be chasing it over. Hank, we're running a little long. I want to thank you for your time, your insight. Your picks are up at jimfeist.com along with mine. And we're going to have a good weekend. We'll talk to you again on Friday, Hank.
North America and Dubai. See ya.
Okay, buddy. Take care.